Hello. There's actually loads more people who have came in. That's very, very nice. It's such a beautiful day outside. So thanks for coming in. My name's Jamie Gilmour. I work for a company called Rightsbridge. And what we do is we help music makers better understand, manage, monitor, and ultimately monetize their various music copyrights, all from one like central dashboard. What that means in the kind of real world is that we help people register their songs and recordings. We help them collect the royalties from those songs and recordings, and we help them understand the data that's in their reporting a little bit better. So what I'm going to do today is like a really quick session, and kind of thinking back to when I first started to learn about intellectual property and music rights. I found it really, really confusing, and I found it confusing because I would come to events like this, and sometimes even things like university, and I would be bombarded with these different acronyms and terms that people use really hard and fast, but nobody really explained what they actually were. Um, but I did learn what they were over time, and I understood a little bit more about the subject, and that confusion transformed into boredom because I realised that I was listening to the same thing again and again and again and again. The same terms came up again and again and again and again. So me and a bunch of my friends, some people who I'm still working with today, would on occasion play music industry bingo, where we would write down a list of things that we knew were likely going to come up in these kind of events, and we would see who managed to get rid of all of their terms first. So what we're going to do today, very quickly, is have a game of music industry bingo. You should have a bingo card, you should have a pen. If you don't understand what these terms mean, I'm just going to like really quickly fire through them, talk about their definitions. We can talk more about what they actually are at the end in the Q&As. But if you already know what these terms are and you're a bit more familiar with the subject, you can just enjoy the bingo. So we're going to have some prizes. We'll do a prize for the first line, and then we'll do a prize for the full house. So I'm going to read out what some of these definitions are because I do have a habit of rambling, and we do only have 15 minutes. What was that, Jen? Oh, no, I'll just click it. Thank you. So without further ado, eyes down for first round. C year. So you'll see C year on the back of records, but what I'm particularly interested in here is the C in C year, and that stands for copyright. Copyright is the law that says when somebody wants to use a piece of music, art, literature, or drama that belongs to someone else, they need to get permission. Naturally, we'll be talking a lot about copyright today. P year. Now, P year is a really commonly misunderstood term. The P here stands for phonogram. Lots of people think it stands for publishing, but it doesn't. And phonogram is just another word for audio recording. And you'll see P used in lots of these acronyms, to stand for phonogram. So that would be the year that the record, if it was on the back of a record, it would be the record was released. So there's two copyrights that you could consider in that. So if you were to like record something, it would be the time that it was made. As soon as you release that, then it changes the term of that particular copyright, and it would then be for that date, or that year, I should say, that you would base that on. So next up, we have PRO. So that stands for Performing Rights Organisation. Now, there are different PROs all over the world. But what they do is they collect on when music is performed to like the general public. And when I say music, I mean songs, very specifically songs. For the majority of this, we're going to be looking at two different copyrights: the copyrights in songs and the copyrights in recordings. So PROs collect and license for the use of music in public spaces and to the general public for songs. Next up, CMOs. So what's a CMO? CMO is a collective management organisation. So it's a bit of an umbrella term that's used really ubiquitously in the publishing space, but an example of a CMO would be PRS for music, but also MCPS are also a CMO. So if you see people talk about CMOs, it just means collection society. And then we've got a very confusing term, which is MLC. Yes. You got a line! Yeah, a round of applause. Martha, we'll speak to you at the end. We'll give you your prize. We've got prizes for winners. MLC. So MLC in this instance stands for Music Licensing Company. So we've already talked about PROs, and we've talked about CMOs. MLC is the term that was most commonly used to describe the organisations and societies that license for the use of audio recordings or phonograms. So that's MLC, and there are MLCs all over the world, PROs all over the world, CMOs all over the world. Next, well, there you go, you got a line for it. ISWC. So when you engage with these PROs, CMOs, you register your works and songs, and they will issue these works or songs codes. One of those codes is an ISWC, and that stands for International Standard Work Code. So that is like a unique code or number that identifies that very particular song. So rather than relying on the title and the duration and the composers, it's this particular code that says that it's unique. International Standard Works Code. Yes. So works is like a term that's really used ubiquitously to mean like the music and song side in publishing. Yeah, so it's not the recording, it's the song that's inside the recording. Yeah, so if you imagine it being like those Russian dolls, you've got the little doll in the middle, then you've got a doll that's in the outside of that, and then a bigger doll. So the little doll in the middle of it all is the song. You know, it's like, it's the lyric, it's the top line, it's the tune, you know, that's the song. And then the recording is an interpretation of that. And then that recording generally lives inside of a product. So naturally, the next move from that is going to be ISRC. So that is the International Standard Recording Code. It's exactly the same thing, but it's for recordings. And you get your ISRCs from like an MLC. You can also get ISRCs from your music distributor, like your digital distributor, if you don't have a relationship with an MLC. But that's essentially what it does. It creates a code that's unique to a particular recording. If you think about how many times you've seen a recording, let's say it's X song by Y band, and it's, you know, X amount of period long, and the performers are the members of the band. They may have made 5 or 6 different recordings of that in their career. So how do we know the difference between one from another looking at that metadata? Well, the answer is the ISRC. It's a unique code. It is, yeah. Then there's a UPC, which is the product version of those 3 things. That's a universal product code. So you're imagining this ISWC, and that's inside a recording, which is made unique by an ISRC. And then that recording lives inside one or many products, and each of those products has a UPC. And again, that's the unique code for that particular product. You'll recognize that's been mostly seen on like barcodes. Next. PPL. We talked about phonogram earlier. So you've got a line? No, just across. You could get a full house though. It sounds like you're doing well, mate. It sounds like you're almost there. Yeah, just horizontally. I should have been clearer, but yeah, just what. You got a line as well. So second line. So that's all the lines gone. Now we've only got the full house. I'm glad the bingo's going well. PPL stands for Phonographic Performance Limited. Again, that phonographic thing that we talked about earlier, that P means recordings. So PPL are the UK-based MLC that licenses for audio recordings when they're used in like broadcast, like television, radio, or in like public spaces like cafes, bars, clubs, pubs, stuff like that. Next, we've got PRS. That's the UK-based organisation that collect for performing rights. That's the UK PRO. It stands for Performing Rights Society. You may also know them as PRS for music, but originally it was just PRS at Performing Rights Society. And then we have MCPS. That's the Mechanical Copyright Protection Society. Now, they are the organisation that issues licenses for when people want to duplicate music, so duplicate works, songs. So if you want to make a copy of a song in some sort of physical way, or if you have a product that distributes downloads and it's creating physical copies of a song, you need to speak to MCPS about acquiring licenses to do that. IPI. Now we're actually moving into people rather than in talking about works. IPI stands for Interested Party Indicator. So you got a full house? But the 2 horizontal lines are gone now. We only had 2, yeah, but you're getting really close to the full house. You're really close. So the IPI number is a number that's used to indicate a particular person or entity. So it could be a songwriter, it could be a label, it could be a musician. It stands for interested party indicator. So think about it, interested. So imagine it being like a party, like a person or entity that has an interest in a particular work. So you would have IPI numbers attached to these assets, like the songs and recordings. So you would have like IPI numbers attached to an ISWC. You'd have IPI numbers attached to like an ISRC, so that we know who the people are that have actually contributed to the creation of those things. Next one is CAE. CAE stands for, I'm not going to put this sort of French accent onto it, but it's like composer, author, editor. It was a kind of like French sounding term initially, but essentially what it means is either a songwriter or a publisher or a party that's involved in the creation or ownership of a work, like a song or a composition. To get a CAE number, you would join an organisation like PRS for music or like MCPS, and they will give you or issue you an IPI number / CAE number so that you are unique as a person. So if you think of all the John Smiths in the world, there's lots of John Smiths, but each of those John Smiths will have their own, CAE number that makes them unique. Similar, we have a PID number. They're usually issued by the likes of PPL, and it's a performer identifier number. And again, that would be issued to like labels, recording rights holders who own recordings, or musicians who performed on recordings. So again, if you imagine you have your ISRC, coming off the ISRC are unique numbers that tell us who each of these people are. Then we've got RRH, that's recording rights holder. We're mentioning this because it's to separate that we have people who own recordings, we have people who performed on the recordings, and they're separate types of interested party. If you're joining an organisation like PPL in the UK or Sound Exchange in the US or another MLC, you need to make sure that you recognise that if you are a recording rights holder, you need a separate membership for your performer membership, which brings us on nicely to recorded performer. Full house! How many full houses did we get? I don't know if it, so what, maybe, do you know what, I know what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to ask a question at the end, and whoever gets the question right first will win the prize. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up as much as possible. We're kind of at the end of these different terms. So why is any of this important? The reason it's important is because if you own music or if you've created music, this is how the kind of flow of rights admin works. It starts off on this side with the creation, where we've got like, the copyright in songs and compositions, and then we've got the phonogram, the copyright and the actual recordings. The people we've got who are interested here are like songwriters, publishers, musicians and the like. When those assets are registered with these CMOs, PROs or MLCs, they are given these unique identifier numbers so that we are able to see, exactly these unique assets. And within these unique assets, we have connections to the people who created those unique assets or own those assets. So it's IPI numbers, CA numbers, PID numbers. To make sure that you have an IPI number for the things you've created, you need to join one of these societies. The music's used out there in the real world by DSPs, which is digital service providers like Spotify, Apple Music, etc. It could be broadcast on radio, it could be played live at shows, it could be on television, film, etc. But it's used out there, and you need to detect that it's being used and make sure that they can report that back to the people who have created things. And PRS, PPL, and MCPS look after that in the UK by keeping track of this data that we mentioned earlier. So they take the data from these music users and they analyse it to say, okay, who is it that deserves or needs to be paid as a result of this exploitation? It flows back to songwriters, to performers, to publishers, and to recording rights holders. Now, the reason we're talking about this is because sometimes that doesn't actually happen. People create music and either they don't register with the relevant societies, and if they don't register things with relevant societies, it's really difficult for music users to then report properly what's essentially being used to these organisations and for the money to find its way back. And what we do at Rightsbridge is kind of try and make that stuff as simple as possible. Believe it or not, that's actually what I've been trying to do today. You can find out more about Rightsbridge by visiting our website. We have a QR code which will take you to the website. Or if you want to sign up for our newsletter, where we send out like a monthly newsletter just about what's going on in the kind of music publishing space, the music copyright space, you can get a link to our newsletter there. That's it. How did I do for time? Oh, we'll do questions. But like, sure. Yes. 100%. It absolutely does, yeah. What I've been referring to mostly here has been the unique codes within those metadata. So you're right, metadata is super, super important, but having a lot of metadata that, how do I put it, is ambiguous metadata is perhaps less helpful than having something that's unique. That's why these IPI numbers, it's why these ISRCs, ISWCs are so important, because they're unique. They tie to a very specific instance. And again, those IPI numbers tie to a very specific individual. So having like full metadata, such as your recording title, your duration, the names of the people who have actually contributed to things are all really, really important. But if you have those things and you've not made that marry up with those numbers that apply to those people, it's going to be more difficult for things to be detected as being used at scale. Not impossible, but more difficult. Absolutely, it's to your benefit, and beyond just being to your benefit, like this is a benefit too, but it's something that's more of a kind of personal passion. People see the publishing space as being kind of solely about collecting income, and it is a little bit, but the data that comes back from your music being used should like tell you a story a little bit. So you know how your music's being used in the world. So you should be able to see, as your reporting comes back in, you're like, yeah, that's that time we did that. That's from that radio play. That's from when these different things happened. And you can kind of like almost check your story through the data that you receive. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great example. But then outside of what you know has been happening, there's a whole other set of stories in that data that tell you about things that maybe you didn't know was happening, or maybe you have some questions about like what different parts of the data means. And again, that's kind of something that we try to help our kind of customers explore a little bit. Is there anybody get any other questions? How did I do for time if I ran mad over? That's not bad. It's a really sunny day, so every minute counts, I realise. Yeah, well, you can find it on the website, or you can get a QR code straight linked to that. I'm about for like the rest of the day and for the next couple of days. I have business cards as well if anybody wants a business card, so you can contact me directly. Bingo winners, come speak to Jen and I at the back. Oh, the question. We need a question so we can get a full house winner, don't we? Okay. I mentioned very briefly, not on the bingo slides, but in a later slide, the term DSP. Can somebody tell me what DSP stands for? Wait, you've got a line, so not you. Digital Service Provider. So we have a winner, we're full house. This has been a bit of an experiment, it seems going all right. Thank you very much.